I'm an automation engineer at one of the banking organizations in Kenya. We do really write a lot of code, and we're going to really learn a lot about automation, data science, as in where you can apply Python mostly. So we're going to get started with Python. So I'm an automation engineer and I'm in my final year. So I'll be finishing my university undergraduate come next, that's May. And I really hope we're going to really learn a lot about Python. So we use mostly Python for automating most of our services and systems. So especially for anything monetary value. So the way other banks transact, so like how do you speed up things when it comes to transactions from one bank to another one? Maybe KCB wants this amount at the same time. We have Equity Bank. They want all these finances from one central bank. At the same time, the other transactions are running. So how are we going to automate all this process? And the same thing again, we do have a lot of data science guys working. So how are you going to use the data to make sure that it really works well for our bank and other banking services, the way it's going to improve those services. So I will be glad to lead you a role, and I'm mostly a community person. So I've led several communities. The first community I led was Kabarak University High Hub. So I joined when I was in my first year. I joined the High Hub community. In my second year, I pioneered the Developer Student Club, Kabarak. So that was in Nigeria. So we went to Nigeria and pioneered the DSE. So the now DSE, so we were the first pioneers at Nigeria. And then later on, I came to pioneer another club called Inclusive Campus Ambassador. So it dealt mainly with the designs. Then the other year, so again, I went to San Francisco. Then we came back and pioneered a different club. And then I joined as an operations director for Africa to lead organizations, especially making computer science accessible in Africa. So I learned about operations until this January, whereby I'm exiting this January, finishing the contract. So I've also been to Andela and Google Africa. I've also been one of the program assistants and at Google Africa, and also been a program assistant for Facebook Developer Circle. So at Facebook, what I was doing mainly was overseeing how these things work. So like how our learners really learning from Kenya and Nigeria. And for Google Africa, so mostly we are overseeing all the learning. And one of the most interesting one was having around 160,000 learners in Africa. So that was really amazing. And all of them were certified. So that was really something that encouraged me so much about community. So also a big speaker. I spoke at DFS, so DFS Nairobi, DFS Dar es Salaam, and also we are also at DFS South Africa. So you know the speakers, and it's been really amazing. So what I'm focusing now is purely automation and site reliability engineering. So as an SRE, so I oversee the way data centers and servers really work, and the main tool for this is Python. So, and it's not really a long time that I learned Python. So I learned Python last year. So I'm really glad that I'm going to take you through these steps. So I'm not sure if you can get started or you are not ready. Are you ready to get started?
Yes, I'm ready to get started.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen. So I'll be working with, I think, let me just leave the other screen so that I can just focus on one. So we're going to be learning the basics. So balancing between our slides and also trying to balance also between the code. So we're going to use a VS Code. So we're going to check on exactly the way we're going to run our code, not actually leaving theory outside, and making sure that we're going to run practicals. So we're going to do a little bit of theory and then some practicals. Then as we continue, you can type your questions if you have any question. Outside tech, inside tech, anything about data science, anything about automation, anything about where Python is going to help you in your career. So I'm just going to get started by sharing my screen. So I'm just going to present my entire screen. Just a minute. I want to present my entire screen. Okay, so I hope you can see my slide.
Yes, I can see your slide.
Okay, so cool. Thank you. So, and banking is something I never knew I'd venture in, and big thanks to the engineers at Central Bank. That was really amazing guys. So they mentored me throughout my internship and also throughout my attachment period, and it was really very fun. So you can tweet around, tag along at Data Science East Africa, tag along Lux Academy. So you can also tag me along at Timz Owen. So my Twitter handle is actually over here. So at Timz Owen. So I'm going to also share something from my GitHub. So that's Timz Owen. So we can get started with Python. So, you think about Python. Most people like when we talk about Java and then they're here at Python. So it's like, wow, this is really amazing world. But it's all difficult, especially when you start from Java, then you come to Python. And like starting from Python and going the reverse way. So most people will think that's difficult. So mostly I started with the Java because that was in 2016 when I started off with Andela Learning Community LC 1.0, 2.0 in Kenya. And when I was starting with Java, and then I thought it was easier, but it was much easier when I came to Python last year, and then later on I got into CBK. Now, Python is actually an open source language, and making it open source, it's not like most people are saying, this is just a private something, and we are going to deal actually with only one thing. So the other thing about Python is the test-driven development. Sometimes you find out that you want to write that code, and then you are lazy to like find bugs. You can use test-driven development. So you first write test. So I know most of us are not familiar with writing a test. So you write test first to test your code. So I don't know how it's really sounding, but you first write your test. Like, what is the expectation of the code that you are going to write? So once your code is up and running, then you can now like write the code and leave for the TDD to like debug it for you. So I'm just going to call it debug for now. Then it really has a lot of libraries. Think of scikit-learn, think of Keras, think of Tensorflow, all those amazing stuff that works together with Python. So you see that Python is really a wide word and like wide one. So and most developers are really using it. And if you now check out the scoreboard, you're going to find that Python is actually among the leading one. Then it's really compatible with many systems. So like one of the systems you're using, so it's purely automated with Python. And I'm really pretty sure that most of the other systems, the backend system, look at like Django and Flask. So, Waluya will think Flask, you mentioned a Flask and the Luyas will go crazy, like they want to cheese. So we're now talking of Flask for the coding side now. So I think that's really basically the main thing about Python. And of all the things, Python is the easiest language to learn. So I really hope that from today, you're going to make Python one of actually like your most favorite coding language. So somebody will come to me like, hey, is it Java? Is it Python? And I'm like, okay. So I'm going to wait. I wanted to play this one. Okay, so this is just an animation about let me stop this stuff here. Oops. tech is starting off. Okay, let me exit this one, and then I can just present from current slide. So this is just a certain animation about Python and Java. So somebody will think like, I'm a good in Java, but wait until you find Python. Then you really gonna understand the amazing thing about Python. So once we are done with that, so like everybody will learn, you get to know the awesomeness of Python only if you are from a Java environment. Otherwise, sisi wengine wenye walianza na Python, I think ni mteremko kidogo for them. So there's the awesome areas in Python as I was talking about, especially when we talk about the systems, the site reliability, this stuff here, site reliability networks. And if you've done kama ulikuwa sharp kidogo and then you uliona hiyo the scholarship or something Google gave out for them to, like, they will help you learn through Coursera. So if you did site reliability engineering, then you will come to know about bash and scripting and automation. So Python actually plays a very big role in these awesome tools here. Example for systems administration. So let's say, for example, for systems admin, working at Google Kenya. So we're onboarding new staff, and so maybe even Safaricom. You are that one system admin, and they have onboarded maybe like 50 employees. Then you have been given 50 laptops to install operating system on them, and then they need to begin their work tomorrow. That would be a nightmare. But if you know automation using Python, then this actually will make your work easier. So you're just going to do write one script for one computer and use a central connection, so it's a central control point, especially if you've done a lot of cloud, then you're going to know about it. So if you use Python, that will help you to automate it in a very, very simple way. Then, yes. Okay. Okay, so now when you talk again of connecting Python with Bash, that's automation at fire. And we also looked at the testing. So Python provides a way in which you can test your data. So for example, you have this large data, you are working at this organization, and then you've been given this data to analyze. How are you going to use that? You have been given this free open source. We have pandas that will help you to actually like organize and analyze your data as a data scientist. How are you going to put these things into practical? So if you don't know Python, it's going to be a little bit difficult for you to navigate. So if you look at also web, Django and Flask. So after now analyzing the same data, let's say you are a full stack engineer. So apart from being a data scientist, you want to connect these analytic data into your backend system so that users could also view them using maybe like HTML, CSS, the web view, the web view is Android. Now the HTML part, I don't know what they call it. I don't know anything of web, but I really know a lot of Android and Python stuff. So as long as you have that page, the HTML page, and you have your backend connected to the analyzed data, that will now make your work easier as a data scientist when you have the exact skills in Python. About the building blocks, especially when learning a language. So umesikia kwamba at some certain point, somebody will tell you like, you know, kwa interview, unapewa something of data structures, algorithms, the big stuff, and when you go to office, it's like, hey, printf, like connecting cables, and that's all. No. That's only because there's a guy who like learned to Google stuff and didn't want to get the basics. So one of the main things, if you want to be a Python guru, you're going to deal with, you have to work. Let me just leave this correct syntax and white spaces. We'll come to know about it. So unlike other languages, white space is not a big issue for maybe syntax error or runtime error. But for Python, it's really a big issue. So you cannot put spaces or tabs anyhow. Now, when you look at control statement, so we have functions, classes. So these are the three main building blocks. And one of the amazing things is handling errors. So nobody will want to be like, figure out the problem, debugging. So you're trying to debug something. In Java, you look, I heard guys saying like, I will look for maybe, I want to look for, so you've been debugging, then you find out that it's just a semicolon. So you find out that, you are not like, the problem also in your code is just a semicolon. But in Python, white spaces, it's going to give you a lot of hectic if you're not going to like focus them a lot. Then we have these three things. You're going to do a quick check on a list, tuples, dictionaries, and sets. So because it's really amazing thing, especially for backend engineers and the scripting and data science, you are given large data. How are we going to put them in an organized format? So to make it readable to a user. So we're also going to look something at context managers, the way you're going to like write data. Maybe you're given large data and then you want to write them in different files. So how is Python going to help you as a data scientist, as an automation engineer to work on these maybe processes or the task you have been given? Now, the tools we're going to use, so somebody will tell me like, well, I use PyCharm, I use VS Code. Somebody will be like, I'm a guru. You know, those gurus are guys that if you're not a Linux user, I don't know. They say, I don't know how they put it, but Linux people, it's Linux, then Mac, then Windows. So unfortunately, I'm using Windows machine, but it doesn't matter anyway, because you can still run a VM on your laptop. So the next thing we have Atom, Jupyter Notebook. I'm sure you are really familiar with this. So Jupyter Notebook, scikit-learn, Keras, TensorFlow. So TensorFlow and Keras will actually like help you mostly when you are dealing with machine learning. So I just forgot one by Facebook, so that's PyTorch. So also PyTorch works with machine learning from Facebook, that's a PyTorch. So you can use these integrated libraries and frameworks to help you as a data scientist to work on certain problems. So maybe you're this person, then the company asks you, the CTO asks you, like, what do you think will be the company's maybe highest rate of profit by maybe 20 that? You cannot just give like guessing things. So with the same knowledge of data science together with these libraries and frameworks, it's going to really help you out as a data scientist and as a person, like as a Python guru, because we do also have like specifically Python engineers. And also we have others that are focused on different areas. So we're going to action on something. So we're going to stop talking much, and then we're going to action on some basics. Now, very basic. I know everybody knows this. Print hello world. Everybody knows that. So in Python, it's just a simple thing. So, but now in Java, you have to include in like the entire class. So maybe like system.out.println, remembering that you have also included the arguments and like 5 lines to print hello world for Java. But for Python, you only run one thing, print hello world, and you're done. And when it comes to variables, so one thing if you've noticed about this is I'm using a camel case naming. So you start with a small letter and then a variable naming. So this is the standard way of using variable names. So for example, my variable age. So it starts with capital letter and capital A, but make sure that your variables again are not too large. So we now have like an integer. So this is a string basically because it comes in between the double quotes. The next thing is we have Booleans. So maybe like my code is spaghetti. So you'll come to understand it. It's no food, you know, Waluya, when it comes to like actually dealing with a lot of business, like I have a problem with the lawyers. Everything that comes along is food, but I don't know what's happening with the lawyers, but I really love lawyers a lot, but I don't love eating at some point. Anyway, we have Booleans. So one amazing thing again we can do is we can print a length. So you can use these provided function. What do you call it now? The length ones. It's a keyword actually. Yeah. So to help you print the total number of characters, maybe in a string or maybe in an array. So we're going to talk about array shortly. Then you can convert maybe your variables like into upper or to lower, and then you can also check if it's actually, is it to upper or to lowercase. Then you have something interesting here. So we have string concatenation. So string concatenation is allows you to maybe bind variables together with maybe strings you've already designed. So we're going to focus on that. Then so I want to combine these two before we move to string formatting. So I'm going to combine the two so that we can execute them on our VS Code and then also move to the next awesome things. Now, when we talk about operations, we have mathematical operations and user input. So of course, if you have joined an organization, so nowadays we have this smart system, so you only have to use your fingerprint to check into a system. But before we had this old system, so you have to type in your name and password and the time you signed into Office. Again, Python does that again. So it allows you to ask for user input. So maybe you have your name and age. So you use the keyword input to, and then you enter the variable name you want it to appear over here. And then you can perform mathematical operations, just like addition. You can use the / for division, the asterisk for multiplication, then the modulus to check for a remainder. And then you can use a power and a maximum, and then you can also have a minimum and a rounding off. So I'm going to switch into my editor so that we can see this in action. So cool, I'm going to switch into my VS Code. I'm not sure if it's really visible enough. Is it visible enough, or I need to zoom it?
Zoom it.
Okay.
Please zoom.
Okay. Appearance. I hope that's a little bit more visible.
Yeah, it's visible. Thank you.
Okay, so now, as we had said earlier, so from this point, so I'm just going to start with this slide here. So basically, it's going to be simple if you want to print Python. So you can just have to say maybe print hello world. And then you can run your output. So I'm just going to drag this down. Well, that's the first step, especially when dealing with any programming language. So I don't know who said that you must print hello world, but that's how I found it. So my lecturer told me like it's hello world, print hello world. So I didn't even mind, like I didn't know. Well, but once I plugged here my name, like it was really wonders. Once I placed my name, print Owen here. So I'm going to clear my output again, then just run it. It was like, wow, being a fresher, seeing your name being printed by a computer was really like awesome thing for me. So this actually like a print hello world. So to create a variable, you just, unlike any other programming language, you don't need to define your variables. So you just define and assign them directly. That's an awesome thing that Python provides for us. So I'm just going to close these other windows. Okay, so I'm going to say maybe like my name, then I give it a variable. So let's say Owen. Then we can also create like integers. So to create an integer, you don't have to place them in double strings. So double strings only are cases of where you want to have strings, but for integers and booleans, you don't have to place them in double quotes. So otherwise, it's going the compiler will assume that this is a string. So let's say my integer, so my int. So let's say, no, let's go to my age. Sorry, it's something that has matches out. So let's say my age is okay, let's say my age is 45. I'm not 45, I'm just placing it here. So my age is 45. So we talked something about string concatenation. So let's say I want to concatenate this without saying that without saying here without like saying my name is Timz Owen. What if I don't want to do it this way? Because take it for example, we have different employees coming into organization, so they need to place their names so that you can assign them computers. So you don't have to go back into editor and like your name is maybe Angel, your name is maybe Jamal, and your name is like anyone. Yeah, that will actually be like a lot of if stack. So you can create a variable that's the name. You can leave it as an empty string, and then the age. So with string concatenation, so this will allow me to use them. So with a plus sign, so I'll say like my name is, then use string concatenation, then use my name, and then also my name is Timz Owen, aged So let me put in some spaces so it can allow me to like this actually give some output. So my name is so I'm using my name is, and then the variable name which refers to Owen, and the age which refers now to 45. So I'm going to place age to 45. So that should be now age. Sorry, so that should be age. Clear my output. So the moment I run this, I expect we are starting things with with some errors here. So let me check what's happening. So it's saying that I cannot concatenate string not integer. Awesome. So we have to convert this thing into now a string so that it can allow us to like place together a string into an integer. So for like we're going to look into finding errors and how the way we're going to solve them later on in our almost the last slide. So I'm just going to give this one as a normal string so that we can have a good time in debugging exactly like how we are going to use the debugging way on handling errors. So we have another slide for handling errors. So okay, let me just, okay, no, we will look at it. So I want to show you the exact error, but we're going to look at it at the end. So this is what is called a string concatenation. So it allows you to like simplify by adding this. So you can also decide to place an integer in front of this, or you can place a string here. So you can use an str, then place 45 inside here. So once you do this, it's going to allow you now to concatenate the same string, but now if you have converted it into that. So you see it's now printing the same thing, but now after we've changed it, because it cannot concatenate an integer together with a string. So the next thing we are looking at is, I think these were the basic ones. So we are finished with the printing hello world, and I think so we can check if it's to upper or to lower. So I'm just going to assume that case, or let me just do it. So to check for this, I'm going to say, let me check if Owen is actually in capital or small letters. So I'm going to say print Owen. So the name, so print my name dot is upper. So this is a Boolean that's going to return either a true. So I think we are done with this one. It's just going to return whether true or false if. So we're going to look on if statement. If it's in capital letters, so it will return a small, actually false, because all the characters are not in uppercase. So if I now run this, so we see that it returns a false. So what happens if we now change these characters into upper letters? So get my output, then run it. So it now returns a true value. So, but again, we can use dot to lower to make the letters into small letters. So we can say my name dot lower. So if you now run the same thing again, it's going to return false because it has converted this upper into a lowercase. Now, when we run this, it returns a true. So I'm printing the same thing that is upper. So we can use the same thing to actually like return a upper and a lower. So we can also use dot is lower to check if a case is lowercase. Now the next thing is we want to check. We are done with that. So we want to perform some simple operations. Then we proceed to now underline strings. So we can say we can ask for a user input. So we can say name. So we can have name, then also say an input. So you have to place this keyword to enable your editor to pull out the input for a user. So you can say, what's your name? And then you can also say under your age. Let's say your company. Your company input. So let's say enter company. Now, once we've done this, that means we have asked the user to actually bring the name of the user using without now add quoting. So add quoting is actually one of the bad practices. So you cannot add quote maybe something like a server communication or at quoting a data. So what happens if the same data changes? So that means you will always be back into your editor. So you can say print. So after asking for the user, print like your name. Okay, sorry, double quotes over here. Like your name is, then add the name. Then also we're going to say maybe like your name is, or your name is the name you're going to put in, then also from, so let's say from company what? From, so let's say maybe from the company you're going to like add in, so like my your company. So once we run this, it's going to enable our user. Now, because VS Code does not allow direct output, so because if you run this, it's gonna like throw an error that it does not allow input from the user. So we are going to run this without debugging it. So if you run now without debugging it, it will give you this interface here whereby it's going to ask you for the user, for your username. So maybe like maybe Timz, and then your company is CBK. So it says your name is Timz from CBK. So the different thing we are noticing here is instead of running it directly using the run one, using Control-Alt-N, because it's just going to throw an output. So it's not going to take in the user input. So when you run this, you have to run it on a terminal in cases whereby you have to request for user input. So I'm just going to remove that terminal, and then we go back into our IDE. So the next thing, I'm not going to perform like the mathematical operation. That's really like too basic. So you're going to try it out. So I'm going to share maybe the slides after the video, because you cannot start printing like 4 + 5. No. You're not going to print this. This is too basic. So although it's a beginner one, but you're just going to try out as long as you now know how printed works, how these signs and symbols are. So the next thing we want to do is the string formatting. So this is one of the amazing things. So I'm going to focus more on this part than to this part, because we've seen printing. So back into our editor. So, okay, cool. Now, let me just clear this. So to allow this different string formatting, so we're going to, let's actually like maintain the same thing. Oh, it's gonna take long up. So let's say the name again, we're going to, let me just use Timz. And then also for the company, so let's say how many computers do you have at your workstation? So maybe let's say 4 computers. And then also your contract. So let's say this is just variables. So you have a contract of maybe like 5 years. Now, so let's say no, it's going to be too much variables. So let's just say the contract and the computer 1 year. Now, if you want to perform string concatenation, this is really an awesome thing. So it's gonna do string concatenation, but in an awesome way of formatting the strings. Now, if you look at this way, so we have a string, just like a normal string. So you're going to declare the names. So then the backslash is used for, what do we call, not assuming. How do you tell a computer not to focus on certain things? So escaping the character, thank you. Okay. It's escaping the character, so it's going to play with developers. So with developers, but what happens if you if you don't input the backslash? So it's just going to print out the we developers. So the next thing again I want us to combine is accessing a string. So we're going to talk about indexing. So when you see strings, so you're trying to access a string at index 0. So remember, strings start from index 0 to the nth minus 1. So if you want to access a string number 5, so you should place your last character to be number 6. So because it's always n minus 1. So that's going to allow you to like do it, not to do it, but to print it. The length, so we have seen how we're going to calculate the length. Then something amazing is slicing. I think most of us love sliced bread, and some of course in high school. So you hold bread like this, but somebody has long fingers, so you think you are holding a big portion, but So that was really like high school stuff. So here we have also another tool called slicing. This is really an amazing slicing tool. It allows us to print between a certain range. So maybe you have encountered maybe a server breakdown, or maybe a data is missing in your computer. So you want to know from which range was that data missing. So maybe from 2016, from January to February, your data was missing. So how do you tell your computer to print from January to March without using if, else statement and any other thing? So slicing allows us to do that. And this is really an awesome tool. I know maybe there might be some systems and automation engineers here. So maybe you have a server breakdown. So you want to figure out from which data center is this breakdown happening? Is it from Nairobi? Is it from South Carolina? Or where is exactly the server breakdown? So how do you print those ranges and make sure that you move your server or you move your data to a server place very fast, and make sure that you do a rollback and fix the issue, and then you deploy the changes without using all these hard-coded if, else, statement, and other thing. So slicing will actually play a big role, and also formatting. How do you format this data to return the exactly variables and the exact data that you want? Cool. Before we go into control statement, so let's do some practicals about this. Okay, I hope you've mastered it. So not actually mastering. So in programming, you don't master, you practice, because you don't just cover one thing in a day and then the next time you are a guru. No. So we have our variables here. So maybe let's say you want to print now this. We'll just come back to string slicing. So let's just finish with this string formatting. So we want to print this in an awesome way, not like a string concatenation. So we have three different things way of formatting. So we have the opening and closing, the dot format, then we have the modulus, then the variable name, and then we have the F string way of formatting. So the F string and then the modulus and the dot format way allows us to format strings like the same way we really want to present them in a string concatenation format. But this now in just one line, instead of having all those variables and printing other stuff. So back into our editor. So we're going to say, so we're going to start with the dot format. So print my name is, then you have to use this. So wherever there is a variable name, so you have to use the opening and closing curly brackets. So my name is, so it's going to take the variable name that you assigned. At my workstation, so having the variable name that should be the computers. In my work in having 4 computers and contracted the corona, contracted for how many years? So we're going to place in that 1 year. So once you've done that, you have to use the dot. So, and one thing amazing about our VS Code, so if you must use this awesome, what do we call this? No tools. Is it extensions? Okay, we will talk about it. So use the dot format. And once you have the dot format one, it's going to take in the exact order in which the variables are assigned. So the first one we want to do is we want to bring the name. So we need to say, you have the name, you have the computer, not the compiler, the computer, and then we do have the contract. Okay, now it's complete. Now, once we run this, we expect that it will say my name is Timz, having certain number of computers contracted for maybe 5 years or so. So once I run this, we now see that the output is my name is Timz, having 4 computers contracted for 5 years. So that's actually an awesome tool about the dot format way of formatting strings. So the next thing we want to do, so I'm just going to clear my output. Just let me comment this one out. Yeah, so that if you still want to look at the difference, you can take a look at them. So the next thing we want to do is after the dot format, so we want to look at the F string. So we're going to say print. The F string means F comes first before the opening and closing curly brackets. And the opening and the closing, not the opening and closing curly brackets, but it comes first before the double quotes. Now, the other opening and closing curly brackets must contain variables inside. So let's say my name is, then put here the variable name, like then having computers, having computers, contracted. So I'm just going to place here to make it short. So I'm just going contracted and then contract. So okay, let's not mind about the grammar. So I'm just going to run it. So now it says, my name is Timz, having for computers contracted 5 years. So this is the F string. So just keep in mind that if you want to use the F string formatting, F comes before the opening and closing brackets. Now, the next thing is, let's use the other one. So just going, okay, because of time, we're going to actually like use just one variable. So let's just use the name. So let's say print double quote. So like my name is, so you now have to use percentage. Then you now have again to pass in like the name. So like it will now have to print like my name is Timz. Now, once you've actually like done that, so you can clear the output, then you can now run this, and then it will now tell you like exactly you're encountering a syntax error. Name string, name is not found. Let me check. Sorry. So we are supposed to place a string over here. So if you now have an integer, then you're going to place a %d. Now, if you remember in C programming, so for we do also have type codes. So we'll talk about type codes later when we talk about arrays. For now, let's talk about the strings and integers. So if you want to print a string, then you are using modulus S. To print an integer, you're going to use modulus D, and then also the other one false. So if I now print this, then I should expect that my name is Timz. So you're not going to add these other characters because of time. So just make sure that you place in the correct data type here. So if I use them, if you have to use the computers, then we use a %d. Cool. Now, quick one. So let's do now. The other thing was string concatenation. So let's say maybe like we have computers here. Computers. Let's just have one computer. That's Lenovo computers. So let's say these are just a person selling computers. Now, if you want to print this, then the entire thing, then we just use a print computers, then it print Lenovo computers. Now, what happens if you just want to print from maybe this string to this thing, or we want to just first access the first character? So to do that, we're going to say print computers, then you just delete this and I open the terminal. So if you now want to print the first character, so that should return L. So if I now run this, then it returns L. So that's a quick way of accessing elements in a string or characters. Then if I want to use slicing, so I can say print computers. Then let's say we want to print from O to maybe like the fourth character. So this means it's going to print from 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's going to print log Leno, so it's always character n-1. So it's going to print the first three characters. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3. So up to the Leno one. Okay, cool. So that's something interesting about the way you can access characters and the way you're going to do slicing. Now, back into this. So we forgot about the length. So let's just do one more in practical. So we're going to say print the length. Then the length we want to now print is the length of the computers. If you run this, we expect to get the total length. So it's saying at 16 characters. So it counts until the space. So if you now count these are characters, these are 15, including the space, it should be 16. 16 characters. Cool. Now back into our slide. So I'll be switching from slide to code, so that we can get that interactivity way of getting the hands-on experience. Control statements. So we have a for loop, and then if else, and else. So it's just like a decision making. So you go to a customer and they're like, what do you want? I want this. Do you have this? So if I don't have it, then this one has it. So you have that then, huh? Like, kama sina ujamaa konaya, or it's just that kind of way of working. So it's just a control way of actually like printing statements if a certain condition is either met or it's not met. So going to combine then you go to list, then we are always winding up. So I'm going to combine the for loop and then the else if. So if you now talk of for loop, so for this, as long as this is true, I want certain output. So maybe you have computers like Toshiba, Mac, and Lenovo. Then for X, this is just your own variable in computers. So these computers must actually feature the list you are displaying here. The list of the characters you are displaying. So for X, it follows this syntax, I think, for almost all other programming languages. So unlike for other like Java, where by now you have like for I is equal to this, then I is less of this, then I plus plus, or that's way too long. But in Python, we do it just simple this way. For X in computers, print X. So it's going to print the entire range. Now, if you want to, maybe we have hit a certain range, you are analyzing your data, then you are at a point that if this data has a maximum storage, so like maybe 50 MBs, then stop there and create a new file. Again, Python does that. So we're going to see how Python actually utilizes context managers and the way it uses dumping. So kuachwa, so kudampiwa, as in kudamp to, okay, kudampiwa for a local man ni kuachwa. But now dumping in Python is placing data. So data, taking data as a string or data as an object. So you can take your servers as an object and then put a firewall, write a script and check for alerts. So if a certain hacker is trying to intrude, then using your script and using your context managers servers as an object, it notifies you. And if you have action takers, then that firewall has to, maybe you have a certain rules for firewall. Again, in Python or in data analysis, you are trying to input in data, but a user is inputting a corrupted data. So you can use context managers for dumping strings and or objects as data. So that's actually an interesting topic. Again, we're going to analyze. So we're not going to go into depth unless we are going to have another meetup where we are going to have a little bit more of into the real code, the intermediate or advanced Python. So the same thing is, so we have for X in computers. Then if X is a Mac, so ikifika this point of the Mac, okay, I'll mix Kiswahili sasa and everything, then break to a certain condition. Then what? Just print X, print Mali, that string is already there. Now, into if-else statement. So I think for loop is just like, just know that for a certain range, this has to be done. But for now, if-else statement, so we want to see if a condition is being met. So for Python, we use double equal sign. I think it's across all other languages, because if you now just use one equal sign, that means you are just assigning. Then not equal to is an exclamation mark and then equal sign. I assume the rest, greater, equal, greater, less than, those other angles. So kiangu inapotea kidogo. Okay. Let's say we are operating on some data. So we have variables. So we have 20 and 50. So we can just check if we're not going to run this. This I'm not saying it's going to be basic, but we're going to run the other one, the for loop one, because these are a little bit because of time. So I'm seeing like time is far much we go. So I'm just going to demo this just once using a whole if-else statement. Then we are just going to use it. So there's a way you can compare between more than 3 elements using and operator. So remember in Java, so you have to use the ile sahihi mbili zile mbili for and, the or operator. What was or in Java? Okay, I forgot anyway. And also if you want to use okay, the or operator was this way, yeah. Nimekumbuka. I don't forget. It's just a reminder. But for Python, it's real word and or O-R-A-N-D. Simple as that. You don't have to use any other symbols. So this is just the same thing, but now using a comparison and an or. Then there is the XOR. The other way is the physics way of computing. There's the XOR gate and the other gates in data structures and maybe algorithms you want to implement physics in computing. So I'm just going to demo this. So if A is greater than B, print this. L if. So now in this difference, so we don't use else if. So we just use L if B is greater than this, then do this. Else. Remember, if a certain condition is not met, then automatically the else will be printed. So before we move into list, let's do some demo here. So I'm going to clear my output. So it's that. Okay, cool. I'm just. All right. So I'm going to say maybe like, so what are we doing? For loop. So we're just going to create a list for computers. So then we're going to provide a list. So maybe like Lenovo. Lenovo. Then maybe you have like Toshiba. Then we do also have maybe a Mac. Then we have computers. I'm running out of computers. HP. Then we do also have maybe the Acer computer. Now this is a list, so we're going to shortly look into how lists are being created, and then we're going to iterate. So let's let's operate with the for loop. So let's say for I know we are used to I, so let me just use I. For I in computers, so you have to use in. This means in this list. So then what do you want to do? So let's say you want to iterate to all elements. So you're going to say print I. So if you now run this, then you have your output as Lenovo, Toshiba, Mac, HP, and Acer. So that's going to print the entire list. So that's iteration for loop. Now, let's say we want to encounter a certain break. So we can say if I in for I in computers. So if let's say now Toshiba. So let's say not. Okay. So if I equal to Toshiba, if the iteration meets a point whereby we have made a specific data like Toshiba, what do we want to do? So we can say we want to break out of the loop. Then we are going to print I. So if you get, what this does is it counts, it iterates through the data. So maybe you are looking for certain data in maybe your company for you to do an analysis. So if you're searching for such data, if you found that data, up to that point, I want to break out of that loop. So now if I run this, then you only find it's Lenovo because the next element will be Toshiba and we are out of the loop. So that means you're going to print just the first element. Now, into the if else statement. So I'm just going to say if, let's say let's assign our A to 30, then assign our B to maybe like 50. So we're going to check for conditions. So if A is greater than B. So now, see how we are going using the full colon instead of using the opening and closing curly brackets like in JavaScript and Python and C#. So we're going to say print is, let's just use A is great. Then else if B is greater than A, then you're going to print let's say like A is greatest. Then if A is greater than B, then print that condition. Else, let's say else print. So let's say no condition was met. Okay, I'm not sure if met is correctly spelled, but we are programmers. As long as it works, you're not shipping your computer. It's the code we are shipping. So let's run this. So it finds that A is greatest because the first condition is met. So this is where execution stops and returns the output. Now, back into our slide. So we have done that. So and we have finished that. So I want to combine the list and arrays. How far? Oh, we're almost done. So I want to combine our lists, arrays, and okay, I'll combine tuples with dictionaries. So the way we're going to access a list, so like we always have this list thing. Anywhere there's data, there's list. Anywhere there's data, there's arrays. Now, to create a loop, you're going to use opening and closing curly brackets, and then for the list also, you elements have to be separated with commas, and for strings in double quotes. Then for list, for maybe like integers, you just have to place them in commas. Then you can print a specific index. So we want to print maybe like Owen, so we use index 0. Then we can print again slicing, so that's 0 to 3. Remember, it's n-1. So then we can like update. So in our list 2, we want to update index 1. So that's index 0, the first element, that's Owen. Then we can update it to another number. Then we can delete a specific element. So maybe like index 3, so that's 0, 1, 2, 3. So you can delete ALC. And we can delete the entire list. So I'm just rushing quick because of time. Okay. Now, the next thing about arrays is we're going to take an array. So we can just going to import all. So the asterisk means we are importing everything concerning arrays. And then array, this is where I talked about the type code. So for integers, we're going to use I. So I'm going to share a GitHub repo whereby it includes all these type code repos. So it's my GitHub repo. Then the value initializers comes in the square brackets. So maybe array 1 with I, then the integers. So and the other array. So to iterate through array, just like we iterate through the strings, the characters, then we use for I in range of the array, then print I. Then we can print as the first element as specific index using the index 0. Then also we can insert an element. So maybe I want to insert a new element. So we have to specify the index. At index 1, we are inserting 11. So that means we're going to insert 11 and 10 will be now replaced. So then we can now remove certain elements. So maybe like want to remove like 80. So we use the dot to move. Then for inserting, we use the dot insert. Okay, now let's see some action in our VS Code. Okay, now let's say we have a list 1. And this list has maybe strings. So maybe like, let's say maybe round. And then we have maybe like the specs. And then we do also have maybe something like the code processors. So let's just use various things. So for us to iterate through this, then we have to use the for I in maybe list 1 and print. I am just writing because we've covered this. So if I now run this, and you see that it's RAM, specs, and core. So that means this has just been processed quickly. So the next thing we want to do is we want to print, we want to insert new elements. So to insert new elements, we're going to say a list 1 dot, let's say print. We want to insert the exactly at index 1. So we're going to say list 1 index 0. Let's say want to insert maybe like the machine type. Now, if you print the list, we expect a different change. So maybe you have a list 1. Then I'm just going to clear my output here. Now, if you run this, this means that at index 1, which was the RAM, it has been replaced by the new element. So that means that we've inserted a new element. So now, for the case of arrays, you have to use it for dot insert. That is if we now add array elements over here. So, but because it's at least going to throw an error. And the way of deleting, you want to delete an entire maybe list. So you can just say you want to delete a list 1. So what happens just from your guessing means it's just going to throw undefined error. So list is not defined because we have deleted the entire list. So that's all about list. So quick one about arrays. So for the arrays, I think it's just the same thing. So for iterating, then for accessing. So the only thing that changes over with the list is the dot insert and the dot remove. Now quick one into dictionaries and tuples. So tuples does not change. You can only concatenate a tuple with another tuple. So if you want to like add an element at index 0, it's going to throw an error. So we're not going to call this because of time, just because we have also like covered them. So it's going to be a list. So you have the list, then list one. So to print the list, then you're going to use the tuple, then to print a specific index. So you remember we did this. So a specific index, you have to use the opening and closing square brackets. Then for slicing, we have the one to range. Then to concatenate, of course, we concatenate strings with age, so we can just use this. Then to delete, as we've seen a way of deleting other data types. Then that means you can also use the same thing. So you can just delete the tuple. Well, amazing thing about dictionaries is if you say dictionary, then what comes into your mind is JSON. So it has a key value pair. So to create a new dictionary, you have to assign a key and then give it a value. So maybe, for example, our dictionary here, so we have a CTO, Owen, computers, 3 companies, CPK. Now, let's say we want to like update existing data, just like we updated the other one, in the size the list one. So instead of just inputting this, then you have to place in the key. So like computers, I want the computer to update it to 5. Then the contract, you can like now add a new entry. So we have a new entry contract. So if you notice there's no contract here, then we are going to have a new value. So the other thing is we can delete a key, and then we can delete an entire dictionary. So let's just do one for dictionary so that you can see how we're going to, the elements are going to change. So like maybe my dictionary. So then maybe we have name. Sorry. Maybe we have a name here. So let's say Timz, comma. Then we have maybe like computers. So that's the key. Then our value maybe we have 6 computers. Then let's say maybe I'm running out of words. So let's say maybe like age. So age is maybe let's say 65. So quickly print and see how dictionaries look like. So I'm going to say my dictionary, and then I'm going to like run it. So if you see, it all happens in opening and closing the curly bracket. So what happens if you now want to update a new entry? So we can say my dictionary. So let's say we want to add just where I'm running this time. Let's say we want to add a new entry. So maybe like a new employee, and maybe like seniority is in seniority level is a manager. So let's say a manager. Now, if you now print our dictionary here, you now see that we have a new key value pair. So you have to place in these values here. So maybe like if you want to print a certain key alone, so like print a senior. So if you print now senior, it's going to throw as a manager, the value that which is now a manager. Now to like update an existing value. So I'm going to say my dictionary, just like the way it appears. Otherwise, it's going to be a new entry. So maybe like we have computer, then we now have you, because you are senior now, you are running 10 monitors. Yeah, that's how people differentiate you when you are a guru. So you see now that the computer has been updated to 10. And because we never add this key, it's going to add it into a new index. So that's about our dictionaries. Now, into 2D arrays, then we finish with JSON. It's always the dictionary. We finished with dictionaries. Okay. The next thing is 2D arrays. So what this means is when you have huge data, maybe, for example, you have to format them in Excel and perform analysis. And then you have a lot of, like, take a look at Safaricom. So at Safaricom, okay, at Safaricom, there's lots of numbers. How do you manage this? Data has to be managed using arrays. And with arrays, you have to use your knowledge in data science to see how you're going to format this. So we're using arrays because it's just a small data that we have here. But for big data, then you have to focus on data science tools. But Python has to kickstart all this. We are still at 15 minutes. So we're not going to iterate all this because it's just the same thing. Then for accessing a certain index, we're not going to do that because we've done that. So I'm just going to perform this quick one. So maybe you have a servers, and then we just have the last numbers, the gateways. So maybe like we have authentication servers. So the first row is authentication servers. The next one is actually the security servers, and then the next one is the call center servers. So how do we group this into different ways such that in case of a system break by hackers, it doesn't affect certain servers? And if it does, how do we quickly get to access to those servers in a formatted way as a data scientist or as a system administrator to where so that you can stop these hackers from intruding your system? So with this, arrays does that amazing thing. So you have to open, because of 2D array, you have to have the opening and closing. First, the first layer has to have the opening and closing square brackets, and then the second layer now has these other layers. So with that, then you can now print maybe like a specific array. So let's see this in actions, then we'll move into this one and finish. So let's say maybe we have servers. Then it's a 2D servers. So we maybe the IP addresses or the gateways end with maybe 12, 13, 14, and 15. Then we have the call center server, so maybe like 21, 31, 41, and 51. Then one more, so let's say this one we have the security servers, 11, 3, so 11. Then we have 22, 33, and 44. With this, then if we clear the output, then using a for loop, now this is where we have nesting. So we've not nested the for loops before, but it's just quite easy, just a for loop inside a for loop. So you're going to say for x in servers, then for I in x. I hope I'm not confusing you. You see, for this case, we are iterating through the servers, and inside the servers, we have other arrays. So it's just a for loop inside a for loop. So once you do that, then you can print. So to make it appear in a good way, so we can use indents. So we're going to see how indenting helps us in JSON. But for now, let's use just the end with and print in a new character line. So we're going to print I. You're going to print I, then use end, then you give the space, then now print out the output. So let me just scroll this one down so that we can have a bigger picture of that. So if you now print this, then it's going to print them in a well-formatted way. So if I now run this, then you find that it's 12 out 13, just the way it appears. So what happens in a scenario whereby, so let me just comment this one out, then we just print servers so that we can note the difference. To clear the output and then run it. So you find that they are all in one line. So the difference between using a nested for loop, then that means your data is well formatted, unlike using just the normal print statement. So the next thing is accessing maybe a certain inside. So let's say our data center is in South Carolina, 1 Central A. So maybe that's now the outer index. So maybe let's say print the outer index. Now, so maybe let's say we print. So let's say, okay. Let's say we have now printed that's 1 Central A in South Carolina. Then under the same outside server, we want to access only one server. So that means we're using 2 indexes to access here. So maybe the first index. So what this does is it's going to find the first index. So this is the main server. Then we have index 1, 0, 1. So we are at index server 1, and inside index server 1, we want to find this 2, 1. So if you now run this, wait, cool. Let me just clear the output again. Index 1. Index, oh, sorry, index is out of range. So we have index 1. So because we only have one index or index. So if you now print, so this is one of the syntax errors. So we have name error, index error, type error, and module errors. So this is one of the type errors we're going to cover them. So we're still having an index out of error because we are just running from one range. So we are not going to create now another outside server so that we can now start accessing the elements. So it's going to take us a little bit more of time. So what this does for our first index, so it's index, this is the first index 0, and then the index 0, 0, 0. So if you want to access maybe your first server over here, so let's say maybe, okay, let's now remove this. So maybe you want to remove that, and then your first server, maybe you have like pre-inbuilt, then so then you're gonna access maybe like printing server maybe server 00. So if you now run this, you'll find that it's printing the first zeros. The index is 0, so that means we only have one element, and then it's the entire server. So the next thing we want to do is we want to print maybe like the first one. So if you now run this, now our main index server, that means we are printing the same scenario. So because we are not using a for loop, it's going to just print the same way. So that means that we have to now create more data so that we can see the difference. The next thing we want to do is then with 2 arrays. So JSON, then we finish in 9 minutes. Cool. So JSON, the same thing like dictionaries. It has a key and a value pair. So we have keys here and we have values. So for integers, you're not going to maybe like let me just zoom this one a little. So for this part, so we have the first name, that's the key and value. So we have the opening and closing the JSON files. So over here, and if you see now this, the indexing here, so we have in double quotes are strings, then we have 2 is a Boolean, so it's not equals, and just like dictionaries. So back into our slides. So then the next thing is now upper to the dumping stuff. So you can dump rubbish, you can be dumped by your girlfriend or boyfriend, but now we are dealing with our programming. So to dump us means that we are dumping into a string value. So that's a file. Then the dump, so it's the opposite way. We are using strings. So for you to work with JSON, so you have to import using the same. So import from JSON, then you have to import the rest of the thing. So what happens here is we are going to access this data. So and then we're going to use indexing. So remember that JSON has an opening and closing curly brackets. Then the next thing is you have your JSON. So if you want to dump them into a string, so for this data into a string and format them, then you can use this way of formatting. Then these are context managers. So the way you want to maybe like write data outside a file. So like from your VS Code, you want to create a file, then you can use open with open. So instead of writing a file.open, then maybe you might forget to do a file.close, because if you don't close your file, then that means your file is open and anybody can access your data, and anybody will steal your data. So this is the best way of using accessing data. So we're going to maybe like dump this entire thing into a new file in a practical session before we finish with handling errors and bugs, and then we'll be done. So this is the main part that, yeah, I don't know my English. In a simple a lot of developers, it's really like, if you don't find that error, especially if it's a production error, it's really like hectic. So let's finish up with JSON. We're going to import JSON, then maybe JSON names. Okay, cool. So then we have our key values. So maybe name. Then the value maybe let's give it like academy. Then so maybe like mentors. Mentors, maybe we have like 300 mentors. Then maybe we have learners. So maybe we have like 700 learners. Now in our JSON name containing the name, that's the name, and then that's like academy, then we have the value, and then that means that's a complete JSON. So if you now print this, so I want us to observe it slowly as we continue like improving on it. So if you do some JSON based on names, so if you print it, you see that it's printed in a way that's not really good and formatted. So this is where dumps comes in. So we can say, instead of using that, so now you can say JSON names, then we use JSON dot dump string, dump into a string. Then what takes in as the first parameter is the JSON names, and then the next parameter that comes in is how do you like want to format it. So maybe like give it an indent of maybe form. Now, when we print this, we expect a different format. So maybe like, just clear the output again. Then this one a little bit higher. Then we run out this. Wow, this is now an awesome way, formatted way in which data is well formatted. I'm repeating myself. Okay, sorry. Is an awesome way where data is really formatted well, because you can see the name, the key value, the key value, the key, and the value over here. So that means with dumps, you can easily format your data. I don't know if you've run a terminal on cloud and then you see this all data being populated over here. The same data, you can format it correctly and in a smart way using, there are tools actually for teachers' hands, and there's also this tool for equipment for Python engineers. That's using dump to do this. I know you can use pandas and any other frameworks in data science, but maybe in future meetups we get to learn about it. So, but for now, let's just know that we can actually write this. So the next thing we want to do is we want to write into a file now. We don't want to output this. So maybe we want to write log errors or data errors in our data, in our big data. Then we want now to output them into maybe something like a new file. So I'm just going to expand this once again. How am I going to close these? But anyway, so let me just remove this file first. Cool. Then clear my output, then drag this down. Now, if you want to write this data into another file, so we can say, I'm just going to leave that print over here. So we can say with, so this is called the context manager. So with open, so open tells the computer that I want to access and create a file, either in a read mode or write mode or in a read-write mode, depending on the privileges you want to give your administrator or the person using your computer or your file. So maybe, so let's say maybe data.data. And the next parameter that comes in is the way you want to write your data. So maybe like in writable mode, because you want to write data into it. And then we now open it as a file. So we have now as a file. And remember, it's 2 colon, not opening and closing curly brackets for others from other coding languages. So once you have this, then you can now write it into your file. So just execute that. I'll become in the office. Yeah, sorry for that. With open data, so once you have opened that, that means we are now ready to write our JSON into it. So we can say JSON dot dump. So we want to dump. What are we dumping actually? The data. So that's the JSON names, and we want a format. So the indent should actually be, so let's say an indent of offsets. So let's give it a actually it takes in 3 parameters. So the file, the JSON, then your variable name, that's the file, then the format in which you want it to actually be deployed. So let's look over this side and observe for a new file to be created. That should be data.json. So once I run this, so if you observe it, then we now have a new file here. So that's the data.json. So that means our data has now been passed from the file over here. This same data has now been posted into a new file. So the new file is actually like the Lux Academy, that's the name, and the other parameters. So that's actually a quick way of creating a file in Python. So if you want to write different data files into a new file. So I'm seeing we just have 1 minute. So I think for the rest, we're not going to code. So I'm just going to actually explain, and sorry for rushing. I think I went slow. So when it comes to debugging, dealing with errors, this way we have talked about writing tests before you write your code. So don't just say, oh, it ran too. Yes, it ran, but what happens in a scenario whereby we have a runtime, not runtime errors, but a production failure? You don't know where your code has failed or what. So actually write code which will actually check for other codes. So just write tests to check for your code. Now, the next thing is automation. So either A or B. So Python will just Python tests will just help you in doing your automations and checking just in case there's an alert or you need to do something or you need to analyze your data, especially when you are dealing with large data. So you cannot be on your computer every day. So if you write awesome scripts in Python, that will actually use your code from a data science, from your data knowledge is going to help you to automate the entire process of data analysis. Very quick without you having to sit there the entire day working on repeated way of instructions. So instead of nesting for loops or if statements, you can just use automation in Python and then implement your data knowledge and actually like print out these outputs. So the next thing, the common errors that you've just seen is the type errors, the syntax errors, the name errors. So you're using an error that's not existing. So import module error, zero division error. So you cannot divide a number by zero, and then we have runtime errors. So the runtime errors and all these other errors. So there's a way of actually like dealing with this. So you can raise exemptions. So for example, if you now like import a module that's not there. So let's import Owen, and then we want to run this. So we're getting actually module not found error. So then we can maybe like divide a number by zero. So if we print like 7 divided by 0, we expect that we get a zero division error. So we now get a zero division error. So and then if you now use back to our slides, so if you now use a variable that are not there, that means that it's going to give us a little bigger problem, especially dealing with errors. So make sure you're writing your code very well. Okay, so to handle this, we have the try catch block. So always close your file. So you see now the other way of using. So like if we had used like all this process, then it would take us this long. If you unlike if it would have like taken us to write this. So just this. So the entire 2 lines is just the same as using the entire 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines. So 7 lines against 2. So instead of opening the file and closing the files, defining the right way, out the right or read instructions, just use the context manager way. So this is the one I'm referring to. The way. So with open, automatically, when you use this, it closes the file for you. So back into our slides. Then I guess we are done. So thank you so much. I know I've rushed a lot. We didn't cover the last part very well. And yeah, maybe next time if we really get time, then we're gonna get and do a lot of interactions with that. So thank you so much, guys. Unless there's questions, I really hope to end there. So unless there's any question, then thank you for listening, and I'm really grateful for you being your speaker for this session. So thank you, and I wish you a blessed weekend. Unless if there's any other question for me or for anyone else, if you have any question concerning Python. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. Thanks for the presentation and thanks for the amount of knowledge you have shared with us. Is there any question from the audience? Yes, mobile user, you have raised your hand.
Yes. Can we please get the recording of the presentation?
I think she's asking if we can get the slides from you, Owen.
Yeah. I'll just share the link with either you or Harun shortly after this. Just in a few minutes, you'll be able to have the slides.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? Yes, you'll get the recording once the session is over.
Okay. In case you would like a detailed, maybe a detailed way of if you love reading, so can just share my. It's okay. Let me like just share my screen for a little while, my GitHub page. So if you try to log in into my GitHub, you're going to find where is it? So there's this a Python for TensorFlow, not actually this one. Okay, cool. Let me check on my report. Just a minute. There is intermediate. Okay, let me just type here. If you actually love reading, so you can go through. Not this one is actually like mixed up. So you can go for this Python intermediate. So with this, it's going to take you through from maybe like chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Um, I've tried like to simplify them and document them. So for example, if you try to access like chapter 1, it explains everything. So maybe like check for the list element, append a new number, like everything concerning iteration and every other thing. So you can go through this. So I'm just going to share my GitHub my GitHub link so that in case you need to go through it, then I guess you can actually like have a look at it. So you can take a look at it. So I'm just going to type it on the session. Then you can have a look at it. So this so there's awesome repositories over there. So you can try like check on them. So even if you're going to do a data structure meetup, then I really be like interested to facilitate that. So I'm doing something amazing on data structures, and yeah, maybe you can like in future that is. So anyway, thank you. You can take a look at those. So there's a lot of Python, but the Python intermediate one is it's not intermediate actually, but it's a more organized way repository that I've personally like looked into it. So thank you.
Okay, welcome. There is someone who's requesting if you can be his mentor in his data science journey on the chat. Kazungu Derek.
Okay, sure, no worries. I'll just share my. It's okay. So let me just share my Twitter. So you can just inbox me on Twitter, and then we'll talk from there. Yeah, I'm kind of off from WhatsApp, so I use mostly Twitter to communicate. So you can find me, can text me up on Twitter.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? I think that's all. So thank you once again, Owen, for catering this time for us and for teaching us much. And I hope you have a successful journey on your data science, and we'll meet one day and do a project together.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you too for hosting me.
Okay, so I would like to address some of the issues I saw on the chat. The first one was someone inquired about the data science bootcamp, about the confirmation email. So the application for the bootcamp ends this week. Like it ends, it's either today or tomorrow. Let me check the date just to be sure. A minute, a minute, a minute, a minute. Oh, okay. There's no deadline, but the deadline is this week. So by the end of this week, make sure you have registered, and then you get a confirmation email either tomorrow or Sunday because the bootcamp is beginning on 22nd. And then as for the group and as for the social media platforms, for Data Science East Africa. I'll send the links in the chat and you guys can join there. And in the group, you'll find we have other data science mentors and also data science enthusiasts. So you guys can link up and see if you guys can do project or perform peer learning. And also, we also have data science campus ambassadors. But as for now, we are still on the startup process. But if you want to know if your campus has an ambassador, just kindly inbox me. Thank you. I think that's all. Yeah. Anyone with any comments or anything else to say, the floor is yours. There's not really anything to say. Okay, so can people open their cameras? We take a screenshot. We take a group photo for the session. Okay. The rest? Thank you for those who have opened their cameras. Okay, so I'm taking the picture in 2 seconds. 2, 1, go.
Na watu wako serious. Hey, watu wako serious.
Thank you. I've already taken the picture. Thanks for attending. Bye. Oh, let me send the picture and make a status.
Goodbye everyone. Enjoy your weekend.
Alam sasa.
Wait, Jimmy. If you set up a link.
542. Mbaya hata naona view. External icons. Set it to June. Oh, at Gideon Kariri. Okay, actually, we have a data science, like a whole year cheat sheet plan, which I'll share with you guys once you guys join the WhatsApp group. And also, we're going to have another event next Friday. Yeah, we're going to have another event next Friday. Yeah, for Python. Yeah, I think it's Python. Let me check. Akili yangu inaniangusha. Yeah. It's yeah next Friday. Thanks. Welcome. Any other question? Oh, ilikuwa nitumie picha. Nimesahau.